Din, die, doy. It's the Rickeshia Willock show. About to inform you. Oh, din, die, do. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am the one and only radio host, Rickeshia Willock, and this is Caribbean Civilization Radio. Today, we will be interviewing a very special young woman who, at the age of 23, already has her doctorate in Caribbean civilization. And get this, she is my namesake. She is none other than Dr. Rickeshia Willock. Good morning. It is a pleasure to be here. I feel so honored. So let's get into it, Doctor. You've written a book about Caribbean civilization titled All We Is One. You are a Caribbean woman yourself from the island of Antigua and Barbuda, and you said in your book that the Caribbean is so unique that it needs a specialized and detailed study. What the listeners want to know is, what does the title of your book essentially mean? Well, my book uses the Creole All We Is One, a Caribbean slang, which in itself recognizes our oneness because being a Caribbean person, we already understand the phrase without truly understanding the meaning, and this is due to our vernacular. Our relationship as Caribbean people consists of so many aspects that we may not even realize. Our identity as Caribbean people have stemmed from our roots in history and culture. So, what you're saying is that our identity as Caribbean people have been forged since the beginning of slavery in terms of what our ancestors experienced therein and how they assimilated to the situation, basically. Yes, our history is very important because essentially it forms a part of our identity. In an article written by Paris C., she noted that our history basically helps us to understand change and it reveals a pattern in our past as well. Caribbean history has allowed us to see basically how slavery and colonialism has brought us together. Europeans colonized and forced them to basically assimilate to their Eurocentric ways. Europeans imposed their values on them because any culture other than their own was basically viewed as being wrong. You know, they were discredited and they were viewed as being basically uncivilized. Yeah, our history basically notes that, our ancestors had to assimilate to those Eurocentric values, and this is where interculturation occurred. According to an article written by Mariel Mai, interculturation is basically the sum of all relations between different cultures through basically meetings and debates, and it basically presumes intercultural exchange founded on dialogue and mutual respect. So, being around all these cultures, it basically influenced how we as Caribbean people behaved. As the older Caribbean people would say, you pick up like a ya and you pick up like a day. So, we basically learned from each other. You know, we picked up on each other's cultures, values, ways of life, and everything. So, from all of this, our identity was actually formed out of an oppressive society. Different groups met, as I said, different races, ethnicities, cultures, language, and so much more. Coping with this oppression meant accepting everything that came their way. Inevitably, the mixing of these varying cultures over time formed a new culture within itself. So, what you're saying is that all these cultures being in one place basically developed somewhat of a super culture in a way. Yes, it basically formed a hybrid culture or creolization. One of my fellow authors that I work closely by, Mohammed J, she basically noted that hybridization is defined as the process of ethnic and cultural mixing to produce new or Creole forms. The Caribbean is a byproduct of so many other cultures, religion, languages, ways of life, and that is what makes our identity so special. Yes, we are a byproduct of so many, but we are entirely separate from them at the same time because of our uniqueness. Our history is where so much of our likeness is rooted from. Therefore, we are all one in the same. That is quite interesting. You mentioned in your book how society has played and still plays a role in retaining that culture. Yes, a lot of our culture basically occurred in pre-literate times, but that hasn't stopped it from being passed down. According to an article written by Cole Nika, she noted that culture is defined as values, languages, and systems of language communication and practice that people basically share in common. And, culture is a learned behavior that's been passed on from generations upon generations through the process of socialization. Culture is kept alive through cultural revitalization. within several social institutions, which are most definitely present in our lives, such as education, family, religion, and the justice system. These systems help to basically influence norms and values that we live in society as basically Caribbean people. When we think of our culture, we think of our festivals, our music, our sports, even our religion and spirituality, which is a mixture of African, Asian, and European influence, which lends to the era of hybridization, basically. Wow, so your culture essentially continues what history has started. Precisely. If two persons from the Caribbean were to travel from their countries to, let's say, America, they would experience, feelings of being alone, not being able to connect to anyone. And this is basically culture shock. And according to the Communicard Group, culture shock is basically a natural state of physiological and physical disorientation that can occur upon entering a new environment and culture. It's loss of social support networks, independence, and ability to basically communicate with persons because there's a difference in culture. It's a challenge. So essentially, if these persons are to meet up together, one is from Jamaica, one is from Antigua, they are automatically going to connect to each other. And this is because of their shared ancestral history and culture. They can easily relate and communicate with each other because they may have had similar, if not the same, tastes due to their background, so many other things. And that's why our history and culture plays a big part in our life. So, this is basically what my title of the book means. All we is one. Although we are all from different Caribbean countries, our history and culture is one in the same, and that is why we are connected. Wow, this definitely made myself and the listeners understand so much more clearer the title of your number one selling book, All We Is One. It was a pleasure interviewing you today. Thank you for having me. It was once again my pleasure. Thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Caribbean Civilization Show with your host, Rickeshia Willock. And on behalf of this topic, we have a special outro song. Hit it, DJ. Caribbean Civilization. All are we is one. Our big Caribbean.